Hello, everybody, and welcome to Local Edition. I'm your host, Ben McCain. Our guest is Congressman Ed Royce, representing the 40th District of the state of California. Always a pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you, Ben.
When we talk about debts, the debt in California, we talk about billions. When we talk about the national debt, we're talking about trillions. When are we going to get our business in order?
Well, that's the issue that's before us in the House today, because we had a change in the elections, and the big issue in that election was the deficit, was the debt, and whether the spending would be tackled. And in the ensuing weeks, and the last week and the week coming up, you see this new strategy to cut back on spending in Washington. Under the 4 years of Speaker Nancy Pelosi, we watched spending go from a deficit of $160 billion to about 10 times that. So what we're trying to do now is ratchet that back down and do it quickly enough that we can reassure the credit rating agencies, that we can reassure the markets that in the long haul we're going to eventually reach a balanced budget. Now that's a tall order, but it's got to be done.
If we continue to do what we're doing, look at Europe. I mean, it's a disaster.
Exactly, because when it reaches the point where the crisis hits and they've downgraded, you know, the currencies in these countries, and the debt service is so great, all of a sudden you have an implosion. We don't want to get to that point, and that's what the Federal Reserve Chairman is warning about, and that is what economists are telling us. The way to approach it now is to ratchet down that spending quickly, and the legislation that you're going to see next week is going to cut hundreds of billions of dollars this year off of the spending. And we just defeated or just passed a bill to try to start the process of repealing the health care, because it's a $2 trillion entitlement going forward. We're trying to cut those expenditures.
And it looks like, because of the recent election in November, that you guys are really going to go about attacking that, at least the Republicans. And you actually have some Democrats that are actually going along with you on repealing Obamacare.
We did, and in the Senate, we hope to get enough support to maybe get it in, out of the Senate. We will see. And we know the president would initially veto it. But what we hope is that by resurfacing a bill and passing a bill to replace what's in place under Obamacare, a bill which will actually drive down costs by, creating a national market for health insurance and tort reform and some of these common sense changes, which won't hit the budget, that we can give an alternative and maybe get some compromise. Eventually, we hope to entirely repeal Obamacare and replace it.
We're talking about trillions of dollars in debt on the national level. On the state level, we've heard Jerry Brown say $25 billion in debt, and I've also heard the figure of $29 billion. I heard someone say recently that Californians, we love our lives, but we just don't want to pay for it.
We don't want to pay for it, but also there's a second problem, and that is we have changed the retirement laws, for example, for state workers to retire at 50 and 55 at virtually full pay. That can't be sustained. Republicans want to ratchet that down and make it more like retirement plans in the private sector and more like retirement age in the private sector. If we can do that, then I think we can put California back on a glide path towards a balanced budget. But we've got to get the governor of this state to see it from the Republican perspective, in my opinion, and support those types of changes.
You're not saying that we're going to continue doing what we said we would do for those people, but for people coming up through the ranks now, we're going to put a stop to it.
For people going into public service right now, the benefits are such that they pay such a small fraction for their health care. Their retirement plans are so much more lavish than in the private sector. For those coming into the workforce, let's adjust that so that we can balance the budget in the future.
Congressman Ed Royce, always a pleasure having you on Local Edition. Thank you folks at home for watching. I'm your host, Ben McCain.